My name is Evelyn Shaw, and the night my marriage collapsed smelled like champagne and betrayal. I stood beneath a chandelier glittering like 1,000 broken promises, watching my husband raise a glass to toast his new company. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward, the logo glowing behind him. Sleek silver letters spelling Invention Systems was mine. My design, my algorithm, my dream. Mark turned to the crowd, perfect smile, perfect lie. This innovation, he said, was born from long nights of collaboration. I froze. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Sabrina Lewis, his consultant. She touched his arm like she'd bought the right. The crowd laughed at some private joke, and that sound felt like a knife sliding between my ribs. My code. Their celebration. My silence. The applause thundered while my heart whispered a single word: run. I left the ballroom before the confetti hit the floor, my heels echoing through marble that suddenly felt foreign. Outside, the city lights shimmered like the world didn't notice a woman disappearing from her own story. Back home, the apartment was too quiet. The framed wedding photo on the shelf looked staged now. His grin rehearsed, my trust naive. I poured wine and opened my laptop. On the homepage of TechVision, there it was. Mark Shaw launches revolutionary predictive design platform. I clicked play. He was on stage again, Sabrina beside him, explaining my prototype like it was his late-night epiphany. We built this together, he said. Together. I zoomed in on the screen. My own sketches, cropped, recolored, relabeled with his watermark, flashed behind him. The world cheered a thief. I closed the laptop and laughed once, short and hollow. You stole my work, I whispered. But you forgot who wrote the fine print. Because the pending patent for that algorithm, the real foundation of Invention Systems, was still registered under Evelyn Shaw. Not Mark. Not Sabrina. Me. That realization didn't feel like comfort. Felt like ignition. I spent the rest of the night pacing, replaying every subtle warning I'd ignored. The late texts, the secret meetings, the way he flinched when I asked about budgets. Each memory was another breadcrumb leading to the truth I'd refused to see. By sunrise, I had stopped shaking. Love had blinded me once. Logic would guide me now. He thought he'd built an empire. What he'd actually built was evidence. I opened a new document and typed one line at the top. Plan E, extraction and exposure. The first rule of revenge is patience. The second is silence. He had both until tonight. Because when he looked into that camera and called my invention our collaboration, he didn't just betray our marriage. He declared war. And I don't lose wars I designed myself. Tomorrow I would walk back into his office. Tomorrow I'd start collecting proof. But tonight, standing in the glow of my stolen future, I made a promise aloud, quiet, deliberate, deadly calm. You built your success on my name, Mark. I'll make sure the world remembers whose it really was. The city outside hummed like static. Somewhere a clock ticked past midnight. And for the first time in months I smiled. Because the countdown had officially begun. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds like an interrogation light. I hadn't slept. My desk was covered in coffee cups, open files, and the dull glow of my laptop screen replaying last night's launch footage on loop. Every frame was a reminder. Mark standing tall, Sabrina pretending to listen, my algorithm dressed up in stolen colors. The crowd clapped like he'd cured gravity, and in the corner, just barely visible, was a small digital signature E.S. My watermark. He hadn't even bothered to remove it from the test model. I paused the video and leaned back in my chair. The anger felt cold now, sharpened. That was good. Emotion clouds precision. Revenge needs clarity. At 9 sharp, I called the patent office. Yes, I said, trying to sound calm. I just want to confirm the current status of application #721835. It's under Evelyn Shaw. The woman on the line clicked through her files. It's still pending, ma'am. Estimated finalization date in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That was my window. I thanked her, hung up, and exhaled. He'd stolen the design, but not the ownership. If I could prove the code originated from my submission before their official launch date, Invention Systems wouldn't just lose credibility, it would lose legal ground. That afternoon I drove to his office downtown. The receptionist smiled too brightly. Mrs. Shaw, Mark's in a meeting. I'll wait. She faltered. My tone left no room for negotiation. Through the frosted glass I could see his silhouette, two shadows actually. His and Sabrina's. Her laughter carried faintly through the door, light and rehearsed. When he finally stepped out, his smile looked practiced. "Evelyn, this is a surprise." "Not really," I said. "I've been meaning to visit the company I apparently helped build." Sabrina followed him out, her perfume cutting through the tension like citrus and smoke. "Evelyn," she said smoothly, "Mark told me so much about you. Brilliant designer, right?" I didn't blink. Funny. He forgot to mention that in the press release. She laughed soft, calculated. "You know how PR works. The public likes simple stories." "Sure," I said. "Lies are always simpler than the truth." Mark stepped between us. "Can we not do this here? This isn't about you." I smiled slow and thin. "It's entirely about me. You built your platform on my prototype. I have every file to prove it." Sabrina's eyes flickered just for a second. That was all I needed. Mark crossed his arms. "You're overreacting." I leaned forward. "Overreacting is what you call it when a woman demands what's hers." Silence. He looked at the floor. I looked at my watch. "You have 72 hours, I said quietly. "Either you credit me publicly, or I go to the press myself." I turned to leave, but Sabrina's voice followed me like a thorn. "You won't do it. You still love him." I stopped. For a heartbeat I almost laughed. Then I said without turning around, "No, Sabrina." I just finally stopped. Back in my car my hands trembled. Not from fear but from control. I had seen something in their office that told me this story ran deeper. A name on a file. A logo from a company I didn't recognize. Luscombe Ventures. It was printed at the top of every document on his desk. Some kind of investor group. I took a photo before leaving. When I got home I searched the name. Nothing but shell companies and offshore accounts. No board members listed. No addresses. Just a single contact email buried in a government registry. I copied it, then shut my laptop. The air in the apartment felt heavier now, full of ghosts and circuits. He thought this was about pride. About heartbreak. But I wasn't fighting for a man anymore. I was fighting for the invention that carried my grandmother's initials, the one she told me to protect like a heartbeat. Mark and Sabrina had stolen it. Luscombe Ventures had funded it. 3 enemies. 1 plan. And tomorrow I'd start with the weakest link, Sabrina. Because people like her never built anything. They just borrowed until it broke. And I was about to make sure it broke publicly. By the 3rd day my anger had turned into strategy. The kind of calm that looks like surrender but feels like sharpening glass. I started with what I knew. Mark had used my prototype, Sabrina had played accomplice, and Luscombe Ventures was pulling the strings. What I didn't know was why they were hiding behind fake names. At 8 a.m. I parked across from Nuvon's glass headquarters, the building gleaming like arrogance itself. Sabrina's sleek car was already there. She never came in early unless something big was happening. I waited, watching her reflection move across the glass, graceful as a thief. When she finally left for lunch, I slipped inside through the side door, flashing my old ID badge before security could stop me. Mark had forgotten to revoke my access. Typical. I went straight to the research lab. The white bars were filled with equations I'd written months ago. My handwriting still visible under their edits. My stomach twisted. They hadn't even bothered to erase me properly. On the main computer, I typed in an old login string I used to test models. It still worked. Within seconds, the company's internal files opened up like an unlocked diary. I started digging. Emails between Mark and Sabrina were smug, careless, incriminating. "Once Evelyn's patent clears, we'll claim retroactive contribution," he'd written. "Investors will backdate our credit." He'd even drafted an internal memo titled Transition Plan Sole Ownership. That wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated erasure. But deeper in the folders, something stranger appeared. Encrypted documents from Luscombe Ventures, tagged private, do not forward. I copied them all to a drive, heart pounding, and shut everything down. Before leaving, I caught a glimpse of Sabrina's desk, neat, deliberate. Except for one sticky note tucked under a keyboard corner. It read, "Elva dinner at the Marlowe, 7 p.m. Confirm." I snapped a photo and left before anyone noticed me. That evening I went to the Marlowe. It was one of those dimly lit restaurants where the prices don't need printing and secrets sound expensive. I sat 2 tables away, pretending to scroll my phone. Sabrina arrived first. Red dress, perfect confidence. 10 minutes later, a man joined her. Mid-40s, crisp suit, a smile too polished to trust. He kissed her cheek like someone who owned more than affection. Their conversation was muffled, but I caught fragments between glasses clinking. Mark thinks he's in control. The patent transfer is already processed. She'll never see it coming. My chest tightened. That was me. The man slid a thin folder across the table. Sabrina nodded, tucking it into her bag. Then she said something that made my blood go cold. Don't worry, Victor. Once the launch goes live, you'll get your 30%. Mark won't know a thing. Victor. Luscombe Ventures wasn't a faceless corporation. It was a man. A man who was using both of them. They finished dinner. When Sabrina left, I followed Victor outside. He stopped under a streetlight, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low but clear. Yes, the algorithm's solid. We'll phase out the original creator once we have full IP control. No loose ends. Loose ends. I stepped back into the shadow before he turned around. My hands were shaking again, but this time from clarity, not fear. They weren't just stealing my idea. They were planning to erase any record of my authorship entirely. I drove home in silence, headlights smearing across wet pavement. In the rearview mirror I saw my reflection, paler, calmer, dangerous. That night I sent Tessa every file I'd copied. Find everything you can on a Victor Luscombe, I wrote. He's the real thief. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Already on it. But Evelyn, be careful. Men like that don't play legal. They play permanent. I stared at her words, reading them twice. Permanent. And yet, as I looked at the photos from dinner, Sabrina smiling, Victor shaking hands, I realized something thrilling. They thought I was still grieving. They thought I was a loose end. But in reality, I just found my first weak spot in their perfect little empire. Because the woman they erased still owned the patent. And tomorrow, I'd make sure Victor Luscombe's name appeared in the same place his crimes would soon live, in public record. The next morning started with the sound of my phone buzzing non-stop. 3 missed calls from Mark. 2 from an unknown number. And 1 text from Tessa that made my breath catch. Found him. Victor Luscombe, 52. Registered offshore accounts in the Caymans. Fronts 5 shell firms under tech investment. He's been investigated twice for IP theft. Never convicted. His last partner went bankrupt 6 months after signing with him. So that was his game. He built fake companies on stolen ideas, draining them dry before walking away clean. And now my invention, my life's work, was next on his list. I texted Tessa back. Meet me at my studio in an hour. Bring everything. By the time she arrived, I'd already brewed coffee strong enough to wake ghosts. She spread out her notes across my table like blueprints to a war I hadn't realized I was already fighting. Here, she said, sliding over a stack of printed emails. Victor's using Nuvon systems as a shell. Sabrina handles PR, Mark signs off on tech. He doesn't even know the patents are being rerouted to a Luscombe holding company. My fingers tightened around the mug. So he's not just betraying me. He's being betrayed too. Tessa looked at me carefully. Does that make you want to save him? I shook my head. No. But it makes him predictable. She smiled. You're thinking leverage. Always. I leaned over the table, tracing lines between the companies on her notes. If I can show Mark he's being cut out, he'll panic. When he panics, he talks. And once he talks, I can drag the whole operation into daylight. Tessa nodded slowly. What's the play? Simple, I said. We make them think I'm negotiating. That afternoon I called Mark. My voice was calm, detached, like a woman rehearsing forgiveness. Can we meet? I asked. Somewhere quiet. He hesitated. You're not going to make a scene, are you? Not unless you deserve one. We met at the small cafe where we used to plan product launches back when we still believed in each other. I wore the same gray coat from those days. Nostalgia makes liars comfortable. He arrived late, sunglasses on indoors, his guilty uniform. Evelyn, he said softly, I never wanted this to get messy. I tilted my head. Messy as you stealing my code. This is cleanup. He sighed. You don't understand. Investors are involved. This thing is bigger than both of us. Victor Luscombe, I said, watching his face carefully. He froze. How do you know that name? So he hadn't expected me to dig that deep. Perfect. I know he's bleeding your company dry, I said. And I know Sabrina's selling your shares behind your back. You built your betrayal with people who betray for a living. Mark's mask cracked. That's not true. I slid a photo across the table, Victor and Sabrina at the Marlowe. Then explain this. He stared, color draining from his face. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. She said it was a client meeting, he muttered. Of course she did, I said softly. That's what liars do. But here's the thing, Mark, you still have a way out. He looked up, desperate. What way? I leaned closer. Cooperate with me. Help me expose them. You save yourself and I reclaim what's mine. He hesitated. What's in it for me? Survival. That landed. He rubbed his temples. If I talk, they'll ruin me. Luscombe doesn't lose quietly. Neither do I. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. Fine. I'll get you what you need. Emails, transfers, everything. But once this is over, we're even. Once this is over, I said, you'll be lucky to still have your name. He left without another word. I watched him disappear into the city crowd. One more man realizing too late that the woman he underestimated had just become his reckoning. Tessa texted as soon as I got back to the car. Got something. Sabrina booked a private venue for tomorrow. Name the Vista. Guests listed. Investors board media. A launch event. Another celebration. The perfect stage. I replied. Good. That's where we end it. That night I sat at my desk again, outlining the counterplan. Step 1, get Mark's files. Step 2, show Luscombe's forged transfers. Step 3, detonate the truth at their own event. As I typed, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A voice I didn't recognize said softly, Evelyn Shaw. You don't know me, but if you want to survive tomorrow night, don't go near the Vista. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, the cursor blinking on my screen like a heartbeat. Someone was scared. Not for me, for themselves. Because whatever was happening at that launch wasn't just business. It was a trap. I didn't sleep that night. I just watched the city lights flicker against the window, like the pulse of something about to break. The stranger's warning played in my head on repeat. Don't go near the Vista. But fear is only useful if you can read it. And this fear didn't sound like protection. It sounded like panic. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. I was going. And I wasn't going alone. At 8 a.m. Mark called. His voice was raw. I did what you asked. I sent the files to your private email. Don't call me again after this. Then he hung up. I opened the attachment. Every transfer, every forged document, every offshore account linked to Luscombe's shell companies. And buried at the end, a recording. Mark must have left his phone on during a meeting. Luscombe's voice was unmistakable. Cold, composed, and lethal. Once the press release goes out, he said, we'll dissolve the original company within 48 hours. Burn the records. I don't care about the woman. Her name will vanish before she realizes it's gone. I leaned back in my chair, heart steady. He didn't just want the algorithm. He wanted to erase me completely. Tessa arrived an hour later with her laptop and 2 coffees. You look like someone who just read her own obituary, she said. Close enough. I showed her the files. She whistled low. This isn't theft anymore. This is corporate homicide. Which is why we'll turn it into evidence, I said. They built their empire on digital paper. Let's use that to burn them down. We spent the morning creating what she called a mirror folder. A duplicate of every incriminating file, time-stamped and backed up across multiple servers. Even if they wiped one clean, 10 others would survive. Then I drafted a press statement. Short, simple, devastating. Tonight, Nuvon Systems will present a product built entirely on stolen code. Its real creator, Evelyn Shaw, will be there to reclaim it. Tessa read it twice. You're really doing this in public? Yes. They humiliated me on a stage. That's where I'll end it. At noon, Clara called. She was my old patent attorney, the one who'd warned me years ago that men like Mark don't steal because they need to. They steal because they can. She picked up on the first ring. Evelyn? It's been a while. I need your help, I said. I'm about to walk into a war disguised as a product launch. By 4, Clara had assembled what she called the legal firewall. Certified copies of my patent filings, signed witness statements from my early beta testers, and the patent office timestamp that proved I submitted the algorithm first. She handed me a folder. If things get ugly, hand this to the press. They'll eat it alive. I nodded. You always did know how to stage a fight. Just remember, she said. Revenge feels clean only when it's lawful. Don't let emotion make you sloppy. By evening, everything was in motion. Mark would attend as their co-founder, playing nervous but loyal. Tessa would wait in the press section, ready to leak the files to journalists at my signal. Clara would stand by near the entrance, armed with the legal proofs. The plan was surgical. One statement, one upload, one public implosion. At 6:30 I dressed carefully. Black dress, simple jewelry, no armor but truth. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a strategist. A woman who'd built something from nothing and was about to reclaim it on her own terms. As I grabbed my bag, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Same voice as before. You didn't listen, he said quietly. Don't go to the Vista tonight. It's not about business anymore. Who is this? I asked. He hesitated, breath shaky. They're planning something bigger than a launch. Just don't let them hand you the microphone. Then the call cut out. For a second, the room felt colder. But fear couldn't stop me now. Not after what they'd done. I slipped the legal folder into my bag, checked the flash drive one last time, and walked toward the door. Because if tonight was a trap, it would be the last one they ever set for me. The Vista glimmered like a glass cathedral. Its marble floors reflected chandeliers bright enough to blind, and the air smelled like champagne and arrogance. I arrived early, badge clipped to my dress, face calm. The lobby buzzed with photographers and tech investors, all here to worship the next revolution in AI analytics. My invention wearing a new name. Tessa texted from the press balcony. I'm in position. Clara's outside with the notarized copies. Mark's already here. He looks terrified. Good. He should. When I walked in, Sabrina spotted me first. Her red dress matched the one she'd worn at the Marlowe. She froze mid-sentence, her smile faltering for half a heartbeat before she found her mask again. Evelyn, she called, voice sugary. You made it. We were hoping you'd come. Liar. Mark joined her, his tie slightly crooked, eyes darting toward the cameras. I told her she should, he said, too loud, too rehearsed. Sabrina's hand grazed his arm, claiming possession. You've been so quiet, Evelyn. We wanted you to see what your hard work inspired. I smiled thinly. Oh, I'm seeing it. She didn't like that. Her jaw tensed, but she covered it with a laugh. Come on, the investors are dying to meet the original team. The word original landed like static. They led me toward the main stage. A sleek setup with Nuvon systems glowing behind them in white light. My algorithm's interface looped across the giant screen, renamed NovaMind. They hadn't even changed the code colors. People applauded as we walked up. A journalist whispered, "That's her, right? The woman who left?" Left. Not stolen from. Not erased. Just left. Sabrina took the mic, dazzling under the lights. Tonight we celebrate innovation, vision, and partnership, she said. NovaMind is more than a product. It's a promise of a smarter world. Applause again. Cameras clicked. Then she turned toward me, all gracious cruelty. And since we believe in honoring everyone who's helped us reach this moment, I'd like to invite Evelyn Shaw to say a few words. It took me a second to realize what she was doing. She was handing me the mic, not out of respect but as a trap. The last caller's warning echoed in my head. Don't let them hand you the microphone. For a heartbeat I almost refused. But then I saw Victor Luscombe standing in the back, smiling faintly, glass in hand, waiting. If I stayed silent, they'd call it guilt. If I spoke too soon, they'd spin it as hysteria. So I took the microphone slowly, the light catching on the silver bracelet Grandma had given me years ago. The one that always reminded me who I was before ambition turned bloody. "Thank you," I said. My voice was steady, warm. "It's strange standing here, watching something you built take on a new name." A ripple moved through the crowd. Sabrina's smile tightened. "I remember when this project was just code running on a second-hand laptop," I continued. "I was working nights, eating canned soup, wondering if it would ever make sense to anyone but me." Mark's Adam's apple bobbed. "And now," I said softly, "it belongs to the world. Or at least, that's what they want you to believe." I clicked the small remote in my pocket, Tessa's cue. The big screen behind us flickered, then split in two. On the left, the Novamind logo. On the right, my original prototype's code, file stamped and dated. Murmurs swept the room. "This is the real beginning," I said. "Before the funding. Before the theft." Sabrina lunged forward. "That's enough, Evelyn." But I didn't stop. "You see, innovation is fragile. It can be stolen by investors, reshaped by lovers, rebranded by thieves, but it always remembers its first architect." The crowd erupted in whispers. Cameras flashed wildly. Sabrina hissed under her breath. "You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I do," I said. "And so does the law firm that's about to serve you papers." Clara stepped into the room just as security moved toward her. Documents raised high, voice clear. "Public notice of intellectual property violation under U.S. Patent 440-1126. Gasps. Victor Luscombe's smile vanished. He turned sharply toward the exits, but before he could move, two uniformed agents stepped into view. Then chaos. Cameras swung, voices clashed. Sabrina shouted something I couldn't hear over the roar. Mark's face drained white. I tried to step back to let the scene unfold. But that's when the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the room. Someone screamed. A crash echoed near the stage. And then through the black, a voice I knew whispered close to my ear. "You shouldn't have come, Evelyn." I froze. "Victor." But the answer came in the sound of footsteps retreating, and the faint hiss of something burning. Then a spark flared near the back of the stage. Not just a spark. A fuse. And before I could move, the first explosion hit. The blast wasn't big enough to destroy the building. Just enough to terrify everyone inside. Smoke filled the stage, lights flickered, alarms screamed. People ran for the exits in chaos. But I didn't move. Not yet. The fire sprinklers erupted, soaking the marble floor in cold water. Sabrina stumbled, mascara streaking down her face, screaming for someone to find Victor. But Victor was gone. He'd set the fuse and vanished. I crouched low behind the podium, coughing through the haze. My ears rang. Somewhere behind me, Mark shouted my name. I could barely hear it over the sirens. "Evelyn, where are you?" "Here," I called back. "Get the hard drive." He appeared through the smoke, soaked, panicked, holding the small server box we'd hidden backstage. "What is this?" "Proof," I said, grabbing it from his hands. "Everything they tried to bury." Security rushed in, ushering people out. Firefighters pushed through the doors, extinguishers hissing. And in the middle of that chaos, Clara's voice cut through like a scalpel. "Evelyn, over here." She stood by the emergency exit, clutching the patent folder high like a shield. We ran together into the hallway, smoke trailing behind us. Tessa appeared from the stairwell, camera in hand, filming everything. "Tell me you got that," I said. "Every second," she gasped. "It's streaming live." I stopped dead. "Live?" "On every tech news outlet that covered the launch," she said. "They just watched their investors flee and their founder vanish. Half the city's seen you expose them." My breath caught. The chaos had become my broadcast. We reached the parking lot. Reporters had already gathered outside, cameras rolling, microphones thrust toward me like weapons. The red lights of fire trucks reflected off the wet pavement. "Miss Shaw, did you know there would be an explosion? Was the attack connected to your accusations? Is this part of your takeover?" I looked at Clara, then straight into the nearest camera. My voice came out calm, cold, and certain. "They tried to erase me. Tonight they erased themselves." Gasps. The words hung in the damp air like thunder. Mark stumbled out behind me, coughing. His tie was torn, his hands shaking. Evelyn, he said, voice raw. I didn't know Victor planned it himself. I turned to him. You sold him the blueprint. He flinched. I didn't mean for this. Intent doesn't erase impact, I said quietly. You wanted profit. You just didn't read the fine print of your greed. Paramedics moved past us. Sabrina was being carried out on a stretcher, unhurt but hysterical. She kept screaming about her files, her future, her name. None of it mattered anymore. The police chief approached Clara. We found evidence of tampering with the power grid. This wasn't random. Clara nodded toward me. You'll want to hear her story. Reporters swarmed again. I held my ground, drenched, shaking but steady. This isn't revenge, I said to the crowd. It's reclamation. They took my work, my trust, and almost my life. But you can't kill the truth. You can only delay it. Flashbulbs flared. A reporter shouted, Are you pressing charges? I met the camera's gaze. I don't need to press charges. The evidence already has. Tessa handed me her phone. The live feed was still rolling, hundreds of thousands of viewers watching in real time. The comments poured in fast and furious. She exposed them live. This is the real founder. Justice in 4K. I could barely breathe. The same platform they'd used to humiliate me was now my witness. Then, a movement in the corner of my eye, Mark slipping away toward the street. I followed, catching his arm. Where are you going? I need to find Victor, he said, eyes darting. He still has access to the offshore accounts. If he leaks those files, everything burns. Everything already did, I said. He looked at me then, not as a victim, not as an enemy, but as someone realizing too late that I'd been the one writing the ending all along. What did you do? He whispered. I smiled faintly. You helped me upload every document. It's all public now, every fraud, every signature, every wire transfer. By sunrise, every investor will know who stole what. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You destroyed us. No, Mark, I said softly. You built the fire. I just opened the window. Police lights flared brighter. Officers began ushering people away from the scene. Victor was still missing, but his empire was collapsing in real time. As I turned to leave, Tessa caught my arm. Evelyn. There's something you need to see. She handed me her phone again. Another message from the anonymous number. It's not over. Victor wasn't working alone. I looked up toward the burning reflection of the Vista's glass tower. Somewhere inside, something still glowed red. And I realized this wasn't just the end of a launch. It was the beginning of a war I hadn't seen coming. By dawn, the Vista was cordoned off in yellow tape. Reporters stood behind barricades, rain dripping off their microphones as they spoke into live feeds about the explosive collapse of Nuvon systems. I watched from across the street, coffee in hand, coat buttoned to my throat. The air smelled like wet ash and burnt ambition. Tessa joined me, laptop under her arm. It's everywhere, she said. CNN, Forbes, even TechPulse. They're calling it the takeover that burned itself. You're trending at #1. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. And Victor vanished, she said. Interpol's already flagged his passports, but someone wiped his last travel logs. That kind of access isn't cheap. I nodded slowly, meaning someone bigger is covering for him. Tessa hesitated. There's more. The anonymous number texted again. She handed me her phone. The message was short, deliberate. The man behind Luscombe isn't in the shadows. He's in your patent records. My pulse spiked. Patent records? I grabbed my own phone, scrolling through the digital archives Clara had saved. Every document looked normal, dates, stamps, digital signatures. Until I saw one I hadn't noticed before. A transfer note. Filed 2 weeks ago. Right after I'd started my legal motion. It read, Patent custodial transfer to Shaw Luscombe Holdings LLC. Shaw, I whispered. Tessa frowned. Wait, that's your name. Yes, but not my company. The pieces clicked in a sickening pattern. Victor hadn't stolen my name. He'd merged it, legally tethering my invention to his parent firm. And someone had approved it from the inside. I called Clara. Did you authorize any custodial transfer? No, she said immediately. Why? Because one exists. Someone used my credentials. Silence. Then Clara's voice tight. That's impossible. Those credentials are only on file with the patent office. She stopped mid-sentence. I heard her typing furiously. Oh no. What? Evelyn, the notary ID that approved the transfer. It belongs to my paralegal. She's missing. The city noise seemed to fade away. Missing? She didn't come home last night. Her office keycard's still in the system. Whoever took it used her login to file the merge. This isn't just fraud anymore. It's corporate espionage. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. So Victor didn't just want my algorithm. He wanted my name attached to his shell company, so if he disappeared, I'd look like his partner. Tessa's eyes widened. He's laundering his failure through you. And if the feds find that link first, I said, I'll look like an accomplice. The sound of sirens drew closer. 2 unmarked cars pulled up near the barricade. Men in suits stepped out, flashing badges. Federal Bureau of Investigation, one called out. We're looking for Evelyn Shaw. My grip on the coffee cup tightened until it cracked. Tessa whispered. What do we do? Stay calm, I said. We don't run. Running looks like guilt. The agents approached. The taller one spoke first. Miss Shaw, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding the incident at the Vista and the data transfer connected to Luscombe Holdings. I nodded slowly. Questioning or arrest? He paused. That depends on what you tell us. Tessa squeezed my arm. I'll call Clara. They led me toward the car. Flashes from cameras sparking like lightning as reporters shouted my name. Miss Shaw, were you involved in the explosion? Is this your company or not? Did you steal your own invention back? The car door shut, muting the noise. Inside, the air smelled like metal and static. The agent across from me flipped open a tablet. You're trending at 100 million views, he said flatly. That's a lot of attention for a so-called victim. I met his gaze. Truth gets good ratings too. He didn't smile. We found evidence of a private offshore account under your name, connected to Luscombe's network. Care to explain that? I leaned forward. Yes. It's called being framed. The car went silent. Then I added quietly, and if you trace the notary ID on that transfer, you'll find a woman who's missing. I'm not the thief. I'm the witness. The younger agent shifted uncomfortably. Sir, we did see irregular timestamps. The older one cut him off. We'll verify it. The ride felt endless. When we arrived at the field office, Clara was already there, waiting, her face pale but composed. They're cooperating, she whispered as I stepped out. But you need to stay quiet until we prove who planted that file. I nodded. Just tell me one thing. Who benefits if my name gets dragged through court before Luscombe's trial starts? Clara's eyes flickered. His board. Then that's who we follow, I said. Because if they're hiding behind my patent, they're hiding more than money. She leaned closer. Evelyn, this is dangerous. These are men who don't lose quietly. I looked past her toward the city skyline, the smoke still curling from the Vista's ruins. Neither do I said. But as I stepped inside the building, my phone buzzed one last time. A new text from the anonymous number. They're already inside. Don't trust the man in the gray suit. I turned sharply. The lead investigator, the one who'd questioned me in the car, was watching me too closely. And in that moment I realized the next move in this game wasn't going to be played in court. It was going to be played in the dark. The night inside the federal building bled into morning. Harsh fluorescent light, recycled air, the low hum of machines scanning files. It all felt sterile, almost too calm for what I knew was happening. They sat me in an interview room with mirrored walls and one camera blinking red. My wrists weren't cuffed, but the silence was its own kind of restraint. The man in the gray suit entered first, the same one from the car. His tone was polite, but his eyes were calculating. Miss Shaw, we appreciate your cooperation, he said, sliding a folder across the table. We just need to clarify a few details about your involvement with Nuvon Systems. I opened the folder. Inside were screenshots, bank statements, encrypted transfers, and one image that made my stomach twist. A digital signature. My name. My initials. Authorizing a payment to Victor Luscombe 3 days before the explosion. I looked up. That's not mine. He smiled faintly. Our analysts say otherwise. I leaned back, steadying my voice. Then your analysts are looking at edited metadata. That timestamp was manufactured. He arched a brow. You seem very sure. I wrote the software that logs those timestamps, I said quietly. And I can prove when it's been altered. For the first time his expression cracked. A flicker of unease. Before he could respond, the door opened. Clara stepped in, holding her phone like a sword. That won't be necessary, she said. Because we just got access to the real ledger. He frowned. You can't just. I can when my client's name is being falsified through stolen credentials. She cut in. We subpoenaed the patent office logs at 3 a.m. The transfer was filed from an internal IP, your internal IP. The room fell silent. The younger agent, standing by the wall, shifted uncomfortably. Sir, that's true. The login came from our own system. I turned slowly toward the man in the gray suit. Would you like to tell me how Victor Luscombe's network reached this building? His jaw tightened. You're making a dangerous accusation. I smiled faintly. So are you. Before the tension could snap, the door burst open again. Another agent rushed in, breathless. We've got confirmation, Victor's offshore accounts just went live. Transfers from multiple shell companies, all routed through Shaw Luscombe Holdings. Clara grabbed the report. Every transaction signed with the same falsified certificate. They're using Evelyn's identity to move stolen funds. The gray-suited man stepped back, eyes darting. That's impossible. But I saw it then, the small tremor in his hand, the sweat breaking at his temple. He wasn't surprised. He was exposed. I stood. You've been helping him from inside. That's why the transfer happened right before the launch. You weren't investigating me, you were cleaning up his mess. He opened his mouth, but the younger agent was already drawing his weapon. Sir, please step away from the table. Within seconds, the room erupted into controlled chaos. Radio chatter, orders shouted down the hall, security rushing in. Clara pulled me aside. Evelyn, we're clear. They just turned the case over to internal affairs. I exhaled slowly, finally letting my shoulders drop. So it's over? She hesitated. Not yet. The explosion, the accounts, the false transfer, it's all tied to Victor. But if he's still alive, he's got one move left. The door slammed open again. The younger agent returned, pale. Ma'am, you'll want to see this. A broadcast just went live. He turned the screen toward us. Victor Luscombe. Alive. Streaming from an undisclosed location. His face calm, voice confident. Evelyn Shaw has betrayed every investor who believed in her, he said. She turned on her partners, destroyed millions in funding, and now blames me for her crimes. This video is my proof. Behind him, lines of code flashed on a large monitor, my algorithm, my interface. But this version was altered, rewritten to frame me. I felt my pulse spike. He's building a second version, a fake one. If that spreads, people will think he built it first. Tessa's voice echoed from my phone speaker. She'd been watching the same stream. I can trace it. He's using a mirrored proxy. But it's dangerous, he's piggybacking off government servers. Then do it, I said. Trace it, crack it, whatever it takes. I'm done playing defense. Clara grabbed my arm. Evelyn, if you hack back, it'll look like retaliation. It's not hacking, I said. It's proof retrieval. We raced to the tech lab upstairs. Agents surrounded us, screens glowing with code. I plugged in my drive, fingers flying across the keyboard. Each line of Victor's fake data dissolved as I overlaid it with the original timestamps, the version history he couldn't fake. Within minutes, the stream on every platform flickered. And then silence. The feed switched. Instead of Victor's accusation, millions of viewers saw the truth. Screenshots of his offshore transactions, his fake patent transfers, and a live overlay showing the file edits he'd made less than an hour ago. Tessa's voice crackled through the intercom. You're live, Evelyn. Everyone can see who really built Nova Mind. I stared at the monitor, breath shallow. Then let them see. Outside, the newsroom erupted. Reporters scrambled to rewrite their headlines as the truth flipped in real time. Victor's face vanished from the stream, replaced by a simple message: connection lost. The gray-suited man was escorted out in handcuffs. The agents who had doubted me were now nodding grimly, apologizing without words. When it was finally over, Clara sank into a chair, exhausted. You just turned a federal frame job into a live confession. I managed a small smile. Then I guess that's my hostile takeover. But as I stepped out into the sunlight, phone buzzing with hundreds of missed calls, one last message appeared on the screen. You won this round, Evelyn. But we built more than one version. No number. No trace. I stared at it, my reflection pale in the glass doors. Somewhere out there, another copy of my creation was still running, and whoever held it wasn't done with me yet. It took weeks for the smoke, literal and digital, to clear. The hearings, the interviews, the analysts debating whether I was a mastermind or a survivor. The world loves simple headlines, but this story refused to fit into one. In the end, they called it the Shaw reclamation. Victor Luscombe was captured at an airfield in Lisbon, his private jet grounded before takeoff. The man in the gray suit was indicted alongside him, a federal leak-turned accomplice. Sabrina's name disappeared from every board document, replaced by the quiet words terminated with cause. And me? I sat in the same empty lab where it had all begun, staring at the blinking cursor on a blank screen. Novamind, my algorithm, my invention was back in my hands. Clean. Verified. Authenticated. But I hadn't reopened the servers yet. Not because I was afraid. Because I wanted to remember what power felt like before greed touched it. Tessa knocked softly on the door, stepping in with 2 cups of coffee. The press wants another statement, she said. They're calling you a tech hero now. I smiled faintly. Heroes don't rebuild companies in the dark. Maybe not, she said, sitting beside me. But they finish what they started. I looked at her. At the loyalty she'd shown when everyone else ran. You ever think about what makes betrayal sting the most? She tilted her head. What? It's not the loss, I said. It's that they steal your reflection. The version of you that trusted them. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Outside, the skyline glowed. Cranes moving, lights reflecting off glass towers that looked too clean for the mess inside them. Somewhere out there, Victor's second version might still exist. But the difference now was simple. I wasn't the one running. The next morning I called a press conference. No stage lights, no champagne flutes, no PR script. Just a table, a microphone, and the truth. When the cameras rolled, I began. My name is Evelyn Shaw. And 3 months ago, I watched my own invention be stolen, branded, and burned in front of the world. I stayed quiet long enough for everyone to think silence meant guilt. I paused, let the quiet settle. But silence is only dangerous when it's mistaken for consent. The room was still. I continued. If someone takes what you built, your work, your peace, your trust, you don't have to destroy them to win. You just have to outlast the lie. The truth has slower legs, but it never stops running. Tessa recorded everything. By the time I stepped off the stage, the clip had already gone viral. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was calm, measured, real. 2 weeks later, I reopened Novamind under a new name, Phoenix Systems. A company without a co-founder, without compromise, without anyone else's fingerprints on my code. Investors called. I didn't answer half of them. The ones who wanted headlines could chase ghosts. I was building something quieter, something meant to last. Clara visited on opening day. You could have sold it, she said. You'd have made more money walking away. I shook my head. I didn't build this for money. I built it to prove that creation survives theft. She smiled softly. Then I guess you won. That night, after everyone left, I stayed in the lab alone. The servers hummed softly again, like a heart restarting after shock. I typed one last note in the log file. Version 1 burned. Version 2 rebuilt. Version 3 mine again. The cursor blinked, waiting for more. Then I heard Grandma's old phrase in my mind. Words she used to say when I failed as a kid building little science projects at the kitchen table. If it breaks, fix it better than before. I smiled. That's the plan. I powered up the final sequence. The screen lit gold. Novamind reborn. And as the data flowed like light across the monitors, I turned to the last camera still recording and spoke one final time. Not for the investors, not for the reporters, but for the people who'd been betrayed in silence the way I had. If someone steals your idea, your trust, or your future, don't chase them into the fire. Let them burn it down themselves. Then walk back in, rebuild from the ashes, and put your name on the door again. Because revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just reopens quietly, stronger than before. The video spread faster than any scandal ever had. And when the headlines faded, the lesson stayed. Because they hadn't just tried to steal my company, they tried to erase my voice. Now that voice was the loudest thing left standing.